Yeah. So every single day we work together to make sure, do we remember the betrayal? Of course. Of course we do. It's a monumental thing in our relationship, but we have other monumental things in our relationship. The day we found out I was pregnant after infertility for years, the day that my son was born, the day that I went for fertility treatments and the doctor said to me and my husband, we can't do that for you. And I burst into tears thinking I would never have any more children, to which my doctor said, no, we can't do it for you because you're already pregnant. And we had, have we had our share of, flipping over a car, on a wet road while pregnant? Yeah. We've had those pinnacle moments in time in our relationship of joys and horrors. The betrayal's a horror, and it's something that we worked through. And why did we work through it? Because my husband was absolutely committed to saving his marriage. He did everything he possibly could to save our marriage. And the reason that he disclosed to me that he's met someone was to give me the necessary shove of, we need to pay attention to our relationship. We've become too comfortable in our relationship, and I don't want this going any further. And that's why I'm telling you I've met someone, so that we can work on this, that we can actually start to communicate to each other, not about house management or micromanaging our relationship or anything like that, but actually getting back to that initial intoxication that we had when we first met in middle school, then when we rekindled our romance and got married 9 weeks later, and then everything that we've always been through. And he got me this, and what this says, you might not be able to see it. It's a replica of a Banksy, and it says, what we do in life echoes in eternity. And he's washing it off, because what you do is not a life sentence. He made a mistake. I recognize that he made a mistake. I recognize that it had nothing to do with me. I recognize that it wasn't my fault. I recognize that he can be a good man. He needs to be able to communicate his feelings. He needs to express himself. He needs to be vulnerable, and he needs to do the right thing. And he's on that path now. My husband is now back to the man that I initially married.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I have another amazing person with me today. I love interacting with great people. This is the most fun thing about being a podcast host, is people come along your path and you get to spend time with quality people. And for me, this is no exception. This is amazing. Vanessa is here with me today. We're going to be talking about her book, her story, and so many great things. Vanessa, welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you here. How are you?
Dave, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here and in front of your listeners. You're amazing. Not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 podcasts you host. You give such a wealth of information to all of your listeners across any platform. And it's amazing. So there's these great touch points that you have. And I'm so honored to be here. So thank you so much for inviting me on Living the Next Chapter.
There you go.
What a great title.
All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. That was it. That's the end of the episode. Yeah. That was,
Yay. Thank you.
Done. And scene. No, thank you. That's so kind of you. Like, I tell everyone the reason I do this is because I get to meet great people. And like I said, when we met for our little pre-chat before we recorded, I walked away from there inspired, challenged. You made me think. I have a page full of notes. I love the way you approach life and who you are. And the one thing that I caught me the first time I did my research on you was, before we met, was I went to your website and your look there. And for those who are not on video with us at the moment, you're listening, make sure you head over to the cover art for today's episode. But there's something special about you and how you present yourself in the world. And there's a story to this, that's what really got me once we chatted, was the story behind how you present yourself in this world and what that means to you And I would love to kind of start there because that's what got me right off the bat. And it's like there's a level of quality of you as a person that
Mm,
shines through. And I would love to start with your look and who you are and how you present yourself. It's meaningful to me, and I'd love to share it with the audience. Can you take us there?
absolutely. Be my honor to do so. So, what you're referring to has a lot to do with my hair. Hair actually is a trauma response. Yes, I know that sounds really, really strange, but hair is a trauma response. Why is that? Because when you go through trauma, you feel that you've lost control. You don't have control of things. You don't have control of your thoughts. You're just all over the place and you want to control something. And I feel that that control is with your hair. It's something that's instantaneous, something that you can do right away. So for me, when I went through betrayal, I used to have hair halfway down my back. It was salt and pepper. I had bangs, and that was my look for decades. It was just me. Everybody knew me that way. And I'd go to my hairstylist and I'm like, a trim, and that was it. I was comfortable in it. Why? I was comfortable in my relationship. I was comfortable being a mother and a wife and a C-suite executive. I felt that, my salt and pepper was earned. I earned it. So when I went through betrayal, the first thing I did was I chopped my hair off to my shoulders, and that was drastic. People around me noticed it immediately. There was no getting away around it in any manner, shape, or form. Then, of course, when you go through betrayal, there's something called trickle truth, where things come out in little itty bitty pieces.
Mm.
So the betrayal isn't just once, there's little things afterwards. So with every discovery day, is how we who have been betrayed refer to it as, with every single new discovery, I did something else with my hair. So the first thing I did was chop it to my shoulders. Then the next time I went, shave off a side. What? Shave off a side? Yes, shave off a side.
Mm.
Then it was, you know what? Why don't we color it? Let's turn it all brown. That was the next one. Then the next one was, let's shave off the other side. And it was like, are you serious? My hairdresser just couldn't believe what I was doing because she had known me for so long. And here I am. I went from having long, thick hair halfway down my back to it being completely shaved off, both sides. And then I walked in and I said, listen, I need you to put pink in my hair. And she was like, what are you doing? And I said, no, I need you to put pink in my hair. So I now have a pink streak in my hair. The good thing about all of this was that I had control. I controlled something. There was something that I can control, and it was related to me, and I could do it, and I was my own person, and I stood in the wreckage of my marriage to do so. The good news as well is that I haven't done anything with my hair since, and it has been years. And that's because there's no more trauma. There's no more trauma that I need to react to. So hence, this is me, I stepped into who I was. My betrayal for me was the necessary shove that I needed to step into my authentic self. What had happened was my world shattered in an instant with 3 words. 3 words changed my whole life. I've met someone. I couldn't believe when my husband said those 3 words to me, and my life completely shattered. And I needed to pick myself up from the rubble of my marriage, of my life. I had known my husband since I was 12. We had dated when we were teenagers. We fell in love madly, deeply, fully. And then, we had separated during, adolescence. When you're teenagers, you don't know what you're doing and whatnot. But he pursued me heavily for 8 years. He was my best friend, and he was always there for me when I needed. And then there was a situation where I'd been dating somebody for quite a while, and that wasn't turning out as I expected, and it was starting to fall apart. And my husband now, my best friend swooped in and was immediately, hey, let me take you out. This is going to be a date and everything else. And 9 weeks later, we were married.
Wow.
And I had my epic love story.
Yeah.
I was happy. Yes, we had challenges. Every relationship has challenges. It always does. But I was happy. I had 2 children. I had the house. I had the cars. I had the career. I had a C-suite career. I still have it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But, I was happy. So I was completely blindsided by this revelation that my husband had. And it caused a cascading of situations. And I became what I was meant to be. I went through counseling, of course, marriage counselors, coaches, therapists, everything else to try to determine why. Why was I going through this? Why did this happen? Yeah, it was a little bit of a pity party. It does happen, of course. When you're betrayed, first thing that you do, especially as a woman, is, what did I do? Why is this my fault? And it wasn't my fault. And I advise all of my clients, had nothing to do with you. And that's a really hard concept for women, especially women who have been betrayed, to understand that it wasn't even about them. It had nothing to do with them. And I found myself screaming at one of my counselors that there has to be a reason that I'm going through this. There has to be a reason that I'm going through this. And I read a quote from Brene Brown that just hit me like a lightning bolt. And she said, one day you will tell your story, as difficult as it is, and it'll be someone else's survival guide. And I was like, oh, that's it. That's absolutely it. And for me, all the pieces started to fall into place. The first piece was, okay, I now have all of this wisdom because I learned from all of the greats, the Estelle Perel, the Michelle Mays, the Debbie Silber, all of the greats that are in the space of betrayal. I've read everything they've written. I've attended their courses, everything else. I wanted to absorb as much as I possibly could and turn it into my own. And the first thing I wanted to do was create a website, a landing zone for betrayed women to come to know that they are not alone. Well, you know how difficult it is now to get any kind of URL that has any sort of meaning. Well, for me, there was this quote from Stephen King, the great Stephen King. And I read his short stories called Different Seasons. And in there, there's 3 famous ones, 2 famous ones. One, they turned into The Shawshank Redemption, which was a glorious movie. And then the other, also made into a movie, was The Body, which was turned into Stand By Me. That starts with a very long quote. I'm going to paraphrase it down to the end. The most important things are the hardest things to say, not for the want of a teller, but for the want of an understanding ear. And just like that, I had my domain name, Understanding Ear. I didn't need to wrestle it away from anybody else. And then I had my website. And I started drafting blogs and just sources for women to come to feel that they're not alone. What turned out to be very interesting was that I had a lot of men approach me. And it wasn't something that I had considered because I'm not a man, but men were starting to gravitate towards me because either A, they had betrayed their spouse and were looking for guidance on how to help their spouse go through all of the ramifications of betrayal. And then I started to have men coming to me who had been betrayed. And that's a little different. How men and women handle betrayal is very different. Both need to have empathy. Both need to have some understanding. Both need validation for their feelings, which they need to express and they need to communicate. And all of this came all together. And I realized I needed to write a book. I needed to write the book that I needed to read when I was going through betrayal. I mean, as I mentioned, I read everybody's books. I got so absorbed in all of their books. But in some cases, it was very overwhelming, especially when you are just at the beginning of betrayal and all of this flood of information is coming at you all at once. It's hard to turn off your brain. It's hard to say, you know what? I need to take a pause. I need to take a break for a moment. Because why? You're in the midst of a 20-page chapter. And you're like, well, let me get to the end of the chapter and then I'll go to sleep, if I can even sleep. But in my particular case, I wanted to create a resource for betrayed to be able to read quickly. That the one chapter is a page and a half long, if that. It's just a quick touch point. Here's what it is. You're not going crazy. It's absolutely normal that you feel this way. And you will, in fact, get through this and you will heal. And I was so incredibly proud to put that out there, to have it go out there into the world. And the feedback that I started to get, which was extremely valuable, was, how do I talk? How do I say things? How do I talk to my kids? How do I let them know what's going on depending on their age? How do I talk to my parents? Oh my God, my parents, my father. How am I supposed to talk to my in-laws? That's always a situation as well. And then how do I talk to friends? How do I talk to friends who knew about it and kept it a secret? How do I talk to, school officials if I have school-age children? Because they're going to need to know that something's going on at home. How do I talk to them? Then how do I talk to complete strangers? Like when I'm standing in the pharmacy line and something triggers me, whether that's, two young ladies walking past me and I'm like, I wonder if my husband would be interested in them. And then boom, just like that, I'm back in the betrayal.
Wow.
So it's these types of situations that, how do I express myself? How do I talk? How do I get empowered to be able to share my story without dropping into the betrayal again or dropping into a victim mode? And then that was the birth of my second book, which was same title, dealing with the devastation of your partner's betrayal, but how to talk to your kids, your parents, your in-laws, your friends, and others. Those conversation starters to be able to get you through.
I think the one thing when in the moment of betrayal, when I picture it, it feels like when you're underwater and the words don't seem to really be clear, they're muffled, and you're separate from your body in that moment where someone's talking to you and telling you what they have done, but it's like you're just like in reactive mode and you're trying to process their words, but then at the same time you're thinking, how long has this been going on? How long have they known? And how long have I not known? And then rewinding and going, okay, so you've known for 6 months. In the last 6 months, what have we done together? Has it meant anything to me? Has it meant anything to you? And there's all these things happening at that moment. And you're trying to process information, but you're reacting. Take us there. Like, how do you balance all of this information flood that's coming to you? Like the dams are open and here's the information. How do we process this? How do we capture this, and how do we survive?
First thing we do is take a step back.
Okay.
A big step back. And take a few deep breaths, because what's happening is that your mind and your heart are disconnected. Okay. They're just disconnected from each other. They're not communicating with each other. And yes, you described it perfectly. It's exactly what's going on. There's just a flood coming at you and it's barreling down at you, and it's okay. It's okay that you're not okay. It's okay that you are not okay. The first thing you need to do is absolutely take a step back and to breathe into your body and allow for it to wash over you because it will. If you resist it, it's going to knock you over. It'd probably knock you over a couple of times anyway. But allow it to move through you. Find channels to release it, because you're going to need to release it. My favorite, my personal favorite, and what I recommend to my clients, and they look at me like, are you serious? A wiffle bat. One of my great mentors said it to me, and I was like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. A wiffle bat to a sofa. You beat the crap out of the sofa. You just hit and hit and hit and hit and hit until you are exhausted. If you need to scream a little bit and the house is empty, because you don't want to do this in front of children because you'll scare them.
Yeah.
But, in some respects, you might even scare yourself because you won't realize how much rage you have trapped in your body.
Yeah.
You got to get it out. You got to release it all. Why? It's the only way that you can respond. You mentioned reacting. The reaction, that's what's killer. You want to be able to respond. And you can only respond when this whole nervous system that you have going on settles down. And it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's absolutely not easy. You can do this. There is absolute beauty on the other side of betrayal.
Yeah. I like that.
There's absolute beauty on the other side of betrayal, and you will get there. And a lot of people ask me, well, how long does it take to heal? As if, you can type in some information into Google, like, okay, here's how many letters are in your name. Here's how long you've been married. Here's how many children you have. Here's the zip code that you live in. Here's your bank account balance, and blah, 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 blah. It spits out a number and says, you will be healed in 87 days.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. Every single person is different. Every single relationship is different. It is going to take some time. I will tell you this, it is not going to take a week. It might not even take a month. It depends on the severity of the betrayal. It also depends on how long you've been married or in the relationship. If you're going on decades and the betrayal is years, that's a lot to process.
Right.
And you mentioned about this situation where you start to replay. You mentioned the last 6 months.
Yeah.
In some respects, it could be the entire duration of your relationship.
Wow.
Because you're looking for those pinpoints, those touch points where you as the betrayed will start to feel like somehow this is your fault, that you have done something. Had you done this, or maybe not done that, or taken care of this, or maybe not done that, whatever it might be, you will second guess yourself relentlessly. The ruminating thoughts will just constantly be there. I can tell you this, when you work with someone who has been through betrayal, anybody, whether that's a counselor, a trusted advisor, a coach, a therapist, a psychotherapist, when you work with somebody who has already been through the experience, you definitely accelerate it because we understand.
Right.
We understand what you are going through, and we can be there to simply, at times, just hold your hand while you cry and you let it out, because what's happening is the pain is starting to solidify in your body. Your body's starting to become the coffin for your pain. No, absolutely not. We can't allow that to just permeate your body. It doesn't work like that, and it shouldn't. It'll feel that way, and you'll feel comfort sometimes in that, especially women. Women will tend to want to share it, share the betrayal with others. As they learn how to talk to others, they'll want to share it.
Yeah.
Men, on the other hand, keep it very close to the chest. It's not really something that they want to address, either A, because they've betrayed, or they've been betrayed. But women who have been betrayed tend to be very vocal about it, or at least initially, because they're angry and they just want to, but they also want something in return. And women need to be careful with what they're looking for in return, because they will get addicted to that feedback loop that they get, that people around them will be like, oh, really? Type of thing. In my particular case, I didn't want to let the toothpaste out of the tube. No one knew about it other than our children who lived with us. No one else knew about it. Not my parents, not his parents, not our friends, not our family, nobody. Well, it's a little hard to keep under wraps now based on what I do, since I'm a trusted advisor for betrayal and transformation. But now friends and family come up to me and they're like, we had no idea. When did this happen? And we mentioned, years ago, and they're like, really? Wow, we had no idea. And I'm so sorry. And I'm like, no, please don't be sorry. In my particular case, and dare I say, I'm better for the experience. I am living my next chapter.
I love that you put that in there. That made me so happy. Okay, the one thing you talked about earlier that really struck a chord for me was, what if the other person in the relationship has told people and they know about this as well? And you've been living life with them and they know completely what's going on behind your back. You're unaware, but they know fully what's happening and they're keeping it from you as well. Now you've not just been not deceived, but betrayed by someone close to you in the moment, but also there's another circle of people who are also part of this betrayal and understand what's happening, but you're still unaware. How do you interact with them after it comes to light and you find out that they know? Like, I don't understand how that relationship is not also damaged in the process.
Oh, it's definitely damaged, without a doubt. We just want to be careful that we don't displace our anger. Okay. We don't displace our anger from the person who's betrayed us to the friend who knew about it. Okay. Because then the two of you, the two partners, will kind of, gang up on the friend and displace the anger onto the friend, and then the friendship ends, but you're still left with your partner and you haven't resolved any of the situation, because what you did was you displaced your anger onto the friend who knew about it but didn't say anything about it. And they might have a variety of reasons for doing so as well. We don't know. We could speculate, of course, but that's a difficult conversation to have as well. And you need to have that conversation because you need that for closure. You need that for closure, whether you decide to remain friends or you dissolve the friendship. And this circles back to what actually is betrayal. And this is a question I get asked quite often when I introduce myself to people at events or whatever it might be. They'll go through a story with me. They'll share something, and, they'll show their vulnerability. And then they lean in nice and quietly and go, is this betrayal? They're not even sure.
Wow.
So if they're not sure, as one of the two parties that are involved in this, maybe the friend's not sure either. So there's a lot of nuances that we need to consider as well. Let's go under the premise that the husband cheated with another woman and the friend saw it. Like, just saw them hanging out at a bar together, whatever it might be, but the husband didn't see the friend. Okay. So the husband doesn't know that the friend knows about it. Then this situation explodes. The wife comes to the friend and says, I can't believe it. He was with XYZ at this place, blah, blah, blah. Did you know anything about it? That's a loaded question. Very much so, but we don't know what's in the friend's mind. We don't know whether they've experienced betrayal and it hit a nerve with them, or that they have a family history of that, or they felt like, it's not my place to say anything. I don't want to disrupt, maybe what she doesn't know won't hurt her. There's a whole nuance of what's going on, but it's important to have that conversation.
Yeah. And
again, not to displace your anger onto that third person.
Smart. That's good. And I caught myself because I threw in the word deception in regards to betrayal. Now, I want to make sure that I have clarity in looking at those two words side by side. Is there a correlation? Are they the same thing? Are they completely different? I need your help on that.
There are some similarities,
Okay.
and there are definitely some differences. So deception is driven by fear, whereas betrayal is a conscious choice. Okay. Both have the intention to mislead, which is gaslighting, and that there's definitely a breach of trust. Now, deception can be on a variety of things. Betrayal also can be on a variety of things, but it's usually centered around infidelity. So we have to keep that in mind as well. There's another term, and actually Eric Edmonds coined this term, and I really, really like it. It's scareosity. Scareosity. What it is it's fear and curiosity together. So scareosity. When your fear is bigger than your curiosity, you won't move forward. Whereas if your curiosity is bigger than your fear, you'll move forward. So if you're curious if this, interaction with somebody else could lead somewhere, you'll move forward. If your curiosity is bigger than your fear. But if your fear is, oh no, I shouldn't be, so close to this other person, it might be misconstrued. She or he might get the wrong message, this and that. No. I don't want this. I fear this. I fear my spouse knowing about this. Let me take a couple of steps back.
I love that.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
I found that really, really fascinating. I use that a lot to explain to men when they approach me before the betrayal happens, because that's important too, that sometimes the spouse, male or female, will get inklings like they're feeling like something's going on, that there's something going on within them, and they're curious or they're fearful. And we talk about that. We talk about, well, why are you curious? Well, I'm getting older. Do I still have it? I know I have it with my wife. I know I have it with my husband. But do I have it with a stranger? They want that validation. So that kind of leads to, well, why do men and women cheat? For what reason? What's the number one reason that men cheat? Well, it's for sex. Now, for women, it's different. It's for intimacy.
Right.
And some might say, well, wait a second, intimacy and sex are the same thing. No, they're not. They're not. There's an emotional component to it. A woman wants that emotional connection, intimacy. Into me, you see.
Yes.
Exactly. Whereas for men, the number one reason, again, is sex.
Yeah.
Just wham, bam, done.
Yeah.
Thing. Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. How you mentioned earlier about talking to your kids. You guys kept it within your home. You worked together and had conversations. And again, I love the analogy of not letting all the toothpaste out of the toothpaste container because you can't put it back in. That makes total sense. How do you talk to your kids about this? I know it's age specific, but in general terms, how do you address this conversation so that your children understand the dynamics have shifted in the home to some degree? How do you even bridge that subject and introduce that to your children? My big fear as a parent would be that that's a moment in time your kids will never forget, ever. Like that's a monumental moment that they will look back on as adults, as married couples in the future and everything. That's a very important moment. How do we approach that?
Delicately, very, very delicately. And I can tell you, I completely screwed this up. I completely screwed it up at my time of betrayal. We came home and I was She-Hulk. I was unrecognizable. And I definitely scared my children. My children were older. My children were definitely older. They were teenagers at the time. Um, Regrettably, we handled it very, very poorly. Um, and it was very therapeutic for me to write about it in a way within my second book, encouraging those that read the book to approach it very delicately and to see it from their children's eyes and to use language that is age appropriate and to let your children know the most important thing to tell your children is it had nothing to do with them, that
Right.
it's not their fault. It has nothing to do with their behavior or how they were, or, they didn't get good grades or they didn't clean up or they didn't do their chores or whatever it is. And children will go to that space almost immediately, especially if they've heard the word divorce.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And if they've heard it with their friends and this and that, and all of the different family dynamics that they see that their friends have, and suddenly, their parents are fighting and having, situations amongst the family unit. That word divorce is very scary.
Yeah.
It's the big D word. And it just hits them really, really hard. You need to have those conversations with them. You also need to be transparent and you need to let them know what you are doing and how you're feeling. And that's okay too, to let your children know how you're feeling, to be vulnerable to your children, but also let them see you being empowered when you feel empowered. But for them to see you breaking down, it's okay once in a while because you want your children to know that they have to be able to express their feelings as well. And you want to encourage them to continuously express their feelings because they too need to move through it. We can't move around situations. We can't move over them or under them. We actually have to go through them.
Right.
And it's a very valuable lesson. And it's a good lesson. It truly, truly is. But we want to make sure that we don't use our children as pawns between us, between the two spouses as well. And one of the things that I do stress in my book is not to talk crap about the other spouse to your children, to your parents, to your in-laws, because they hear all of that. Daddy is still daddy to them.
Right.
Mommy is still mommy to them. So you have to think about the language that you're going to use in communicating with your children. And you mentioned it, it's a point in time for them. You definitely don't want to tie it to something really, really important, like a trip to Disneyland. Oh, we're going to go to Disneyland. And then on the second day, you bring, your junior and your daughter into your hotel room and you're like, by the way, we're getting divorced.
Yeah.
They will forever associate Disney with divorce, the two Ds.
Yeah.
You don't want that type of situation. You want to make sure that when you do this and you have a conversation with them and you share this with them, that you're clear on what exactly you are sharing. And if you want it to stay contained within the family unit, or they're going to tell the grandparents, which are both your parents and your in-laws, so there's a lot of dynamics that come into play. There's also, I mentioned school, depending on what age your children are,
Right.
They might be going into school as a 5, 6, 7-year-old. My parents are getting divorced. My parents are constantly fighting, You kind of want to be able to be sure that you tell at least your child's teacher what they're experiencing, because the child will definitely take it all in. And it's a lot to bear. You as the betrayed are taking in so much as well. But now think of your children.
Yeah.
And think of it through their eyes and put yourself in their position of how they're viewing the situation, because they're not viewing it from adult eyes. They're viewing it from their own eyes.
Right. In the moment of betrayal, I would think that trust takes a hit. Trust in yourself, trust in your relationship, in others. How do we rebuild trust after the rug has been pulled out from underneath us and we are flat on our back? How do we rebuild trust?
Brick by brick.
Okay.
It's a slow, agonizing process, but it's brick by brick. And there'll be 2 steps forward and there'll be 1 step back. Sometimes you'll feel like you're standing completely still and you're like, I'm not making any progress.
Mm.
You know what the progress is in that exact moment? You recognize that you are standing still, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's absolutely okay. It's okay that you're not okay. Tomorrow's another day, and tomorrow will be better. And sometimes you're standing still to take a nice deep breath so that you can run the next day, so that you can take 4 steps forward based on circumstances. You know, sometimes you'll feel like you're running in quicksand, like you're not going anywhere and you're exhausting yourself.
Right.
Why? Because you need to take a step back. There are times that you will need to take a step back, take a nice deep breath, let it out, and give your body a chance to catch up. Because you're all the way over there, and your body and your mind, they're completely disconnected, and they're trying to catch up to you, but they're also trying to catch up to each other. It's hard. It is hard. This is hard work. It's not easy. And I don't wish this on anyone. This is the most gut-wrenching thing to have to go through as an individual and as part of a couple and as part of a family unit and as part of a community, because it does affect a community as well. Especially when there's a scandal involved in it and it becomes public knowledge and suddenly everybody's in your business. And again, then we go back to the toothpaste out of the tube.
Right.
You know, suddenly you get judgment from everybody. And sometimes you don't need that judgment. Sometimes it's not even warranted. And a lot of it, you mentioned the wah, wah, wah voice,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's just wah, wah, wah. It's like the peanuts. It's like
Yeah.
the adults and the
Yeah.
peanuts. It's wah, 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 wah. Sometimes you just need to be able to shut it all down. Take a vacation from it all. It'll always be there. It absolutely will. But we want to be able to just take a breath. Just take a breath and recognize, 1, it's not your fault. 2, it had nothing to do with you. Truly didn't. Had nothing to do with you. Their actions, they did this, not you.
Yeah.
And the third thing is, it's okay that you're not okay. It's okay that you're not okay. 4th thing is, you will be. And the 5th thing, there's beauty on the other side. There is beauty on the other side.
I love it. Okay, Vanessa, what about the person who's listening to our conversation and they are the betrayer? They've done it, but they haven't told anyone yet. It's not public knowledge. They haven't had the conversation. They know what they've done. They are aware of what they've done, and they're afraid because everything is good right now. The birds are singing. I've got my routine. The family's good. Everything's humming along, but there's something no one in my family knows, and it's the fact that I have made a very bad choice. I've done something that's going to change the course of history and my future, but I haven't said anything. What is your message to the person who hasn't said something yet from your perspective? What do they need to do? I can anticipate, but what do they need to do, and how soon do they need to do this?
It's going to eat them up from the inside out. It just will. They can be as strong as they think they are. They can think that, nobody will find out, nobody will know. You know, we hear these stories all the time of, suddenly somebody's, showing up on the doorstep and going, "Hi, Dad. Hi," type of thing. We hear it all the time. It's going to eat you up from the inside out. My first and foremost suggestion is to talk to a professional, yourself, just to work through why you did it. Because that's usually the number one question that the betrayed asks at point of discovery. Why?
Yeah.
Why did you do this?
Yeah.
Why did you do this to me? Why? Why is the number one question. And it's extremely helpful if you already know the answer to that why.
Wow.
And you need to know it for yourself. Why did you do this? Because if you did it once, is there a possibility that you will do it again? And the fact that you acknowledge that you've done something and you know that this is going to be an atomic bomb that's going to explode in your relationship,
Yeah.
There's fear. There's absolute fear. But you need to work with someone. Don't do this alone. Work with a professional to work through your why. And they'll help you determine when to say something, how to say something. Because the more answers you have to be able to help your spouse understand why this is happening, the easier, and I'm using a little bit of caution with the word easy,
Yeah.
it is to get through the process, especially if you want forgiveness and you want to continue the relationship. And you have to keep in mind that sometimes people want out of a relationship and they're too chicken to say anything about it, like they want out. So they'll do the unthinkable. Think of it like in The Godfather. His wife wanted out. She wanted out. So what did she do? She aborted his son because she knew he would never forgive her for that. Well, maybe betraying your spouse, secretly you're hoping that your spouse doesn't forgive you for that. And that's your out. It's a sneaky way to go about it. It's a screwed up way to go about it.
Yeah.
But it does happen.
Yeah.
I want out of the relationship. What can I do to get out of the relationship? Very swiftly, just like that. What do I know that my partner will not accept? What's the boundary that I have crossed? Well, betrayal can be that. So again, you want to work with somebody to determine your why.
When we talked in our pre-chat, you gave me an amazing wait, what moment as we were talking through this, because we're talking about working through betrayal and from your perspective. But then you said something to me about your current relationship status that floored me, because in my mind, I was on one path thinking that the results naturally would be A, B, and C. And I was kind of going down this path. And then you said, nope, this is where we're at today. And I'm like, wait, what? Can you tell me your relationship status as the result of all the things that you work through? Because I think that just shines a light on A, how you can help people, and B, that there's hope. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I'll be more than happy to. Well, my husband and I shared our 33rd wedding anniversary. We are still together.
I'm clapping. That's amazing.
Yeah. So every single day, we work together to make sure, do we remember the betrayal? Of course. Of course we do. It's a monumental thing in our relationship, but we have other monumental things in our relationship. The day we found out I was pregnant after infertility for years, the day that my son was born, the day that I went for fertility treatments and the doctor said to me and my husband, we can't do that for you. And I burst into tears thinking I would never have any more children, to which my doctor said, no, we can't do it for you because you're already pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
Come on. And we had, have we had our share of, flipping over a car, on a wet road while pregnant? Yeah. We've had those pinnacle moments in time in our relationship of joys and horrors. The betrayal's a horror, and it's something that we worked through. And why did we work through it? Because my husband was absolutely committed to saving his marriage. He did everything he possibly could to save our marriage. And the reason that he disclosed to me that he's met someone was to give me the necessary shove of, we need to pay attention to our relationship. We've become too comfortable in our relationship, and I don't want this going any further. And that's why I'm telling you, I've met someone so that we can work on this, that we can actually start to communicate to each other, not about house management or micromanaging our relationship or anything like that, but actually getting back to that initial intoxication that we had when we first met in middle school, then when we rekindled our romance and got married 9 weeks later, and then everything that we've always been through. And he got me this, and what this says, you might not be able to see it. It's a replica of a Banksy, and it says, "What we do in life echoes in eternity." And he's washing it off, because what you do is not a life sentence.
Wow.
He made a mistake. I recognize that he made a mistake. I recognize that it had nothing to do with me. I recognize that it wasn't my fault. I recognize that he can be a good man. He needs to be able to communicate his feelings. He needs to express himself. He needs to be vulnerable, and he needs to do the right thing. And he's on that path now. My husband is now back to the man that I initially married. So,
Wow.
for others that have been betrayed who stay, they refer to it as a second marriage. They've married their spouse all over again, maybe sometimes with new rings, a new ceremony, things of that nature to solidify the relationship again. But for me, working with clients, I want to stress that it's inconsequential to me whether they stay or go. I don't work with clients in hopes that they stay. I don't work with clients that want to separate and feel that, I would be of assistance towards that, or I couldn't be of assistance towards that. My role and my goal is for the person who has been betrayed not to feel so alone, not to feel so isolated, not to turtle. I want them to feel safe. I want them to trust again. I want them to love again so that they can live again and live that next chapter, whatever that chapter is, because it hasn't been written yet, but you get to write it. So use what happened to you as a catalyst to move on, to do something amazing in any capacity that you want to do it in. And for me, it's being able to help others, to give that hand out to somebody else who's suffering, because I know what it feels like. I know exactly what it feels like, and I want to be able to help.
Vanessa, I knew this was going to be an amazing discussion, and my hope is through our conversation, this opens the door for people to feel safe to come and speak with you and work with you, to buy the books, to learn from your example and who you are as a person, because it shines through with conviction and heart, passion. I can see that you're really here to do that. And that visual behind you of erasing those words on the wall, I feel like that's your calling to help people, right? And I don't know, you've been so gracious with your time to go this far in time with me to talk. For those people who do want to connect with you, Vanessa, and continue the conversation, A, we want them to buy the book. So please talk about that and where we can find it. But B, how we connect with you so that we can also continue the conversation, because I know that you can help so many people listening. So I'm excited to share that. Can you tell us where to go and how to connect?
Sure, Dave. Thank you so much. My books are available on Amazon. They're both dealing with the devastation of your partner's betrayal. My first is What to Do When Your World Falls Apart. And my second is How to Talk to Your Kids, your parents, your in-laws, your friends, and others. So you can look it up by my name as well. Sometimes typing in Dealing with the Devastation is a lot to type in, but it's Vanessa Cardenas, Cardenas, on Amazon or anywhere that books are sold. You can absolutely find it. Again, on Kindle as well as paperback. And to find me, I am, again, my website. I'm so proud of it. Thank you so much for commenting on it as well. I'm glad that you found it beneficial to get a little bit of history of me. It's understandingear.com. And I am on Instagram. Oh, I am loving Instagram. It's something I've never really got involved in, but I absolutely love it. And my handle on Instagram is trusted_advisor_for_betrayal. And you can find me there.
Nice.
You can see all of my wisdom that I share, again, so freely. It's my honor to do so. I just want women and men to know that they're not alone, that they're absolutely not alone. And there's no shame or guilt or anything. I'm happy to share my story. I absolutely am. There's no guilt or shame by sharing it. And again, as Brene Brown said, if my story becomes a survival guide for someone else that pulls them out of the rubble that their life is suddenly in, oh, it feels so good. It just does. So I'm excited for that. And you can find me on Facebook as well. It's the same handle for Instagram as it is for Facebook. Thank you so much for the opportunity to allow me to share my story. And hopefully some of your audience members, it might not benefit them at the moment. And I'm hoping that actually in some respects, it never benefits them because they'll never go through betrayal. But unfortunately, we all know someone who has gone through betrayal, and they might not be forthcoming with information, but they do need to know about it. They definitely do. And one thing that we didn't touch on that I just want to share, if I could,
Please.
is sometimes women are blindsided by it in their doctor's office. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but we've been talking as if it's been shared. Okay. Sometimes it's at the doctor's office where the doctor will walk in with test results and comment that the woman has an STD. And initially the woman's like, wait a second, that's not my chart. You've got somebody else's chart. That's not mine. And then they're like, oh, Mrs. Cardenas or whatever the name is and stuff. Yeah, no, you have an STD. What are you talking about? I'm faithful. I've been faithful. And then it dawns on them and they're like, wow. So one of the things that I do is I like to speak at conferences with GYN doctors, because this is the most difficult conversation that they have. There's a list of 5 difficult conversations that they have with their clients, but this is one of them. This ranks in the top 5 of having to disclose you have an STD and it's caused by your partner's extracurricular activities.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I welcome those speaking engagements because, again, I want to reach as many as I possibly can to let them know they're not alone.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of my closing thoughts, was if you have any kind of event coming up and you're looking for a dynamic speaker who's going to help many people in the audience, and a published author and a coach and everything, you've got to talk to Vanessa, because I've just been sitting here as a student taking this in today, and the way you present yourself and how how thoughtful you are in your responses and your preparation. You showed me your notes before we started. You are ready to go, and that just shines through. And I think you would be a joy to have on the stage and be up there to inspire people.
Thank you for
And
that.
support people. I really, really think that is a great place for you. So being on my podcast and sharing with the audiences is amazing. And I just can't wait for people to start reaching out and connecting with you as a result of this, and buying the book and leaving a great review on the books as well. That's important.
I appreciate that. And you and Jennifer, you so inspired me again when we spoke off camera about your relationship and 3 beautiful children and all those life moments and whatnot, and the commitment level and just all that you do. And what resonated with me most was the fact that you shared how much you communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Especially since you guys do podcasts together. So you're working together, you're always communicating with each other, and it's so beautiful. And that's really the key. If there's a key ingredient to ward off betrayal, to kind of keep it at bay, it's communication. Mm-hmm. It's communicating your thoughts. It's communicating how you're feeling to get that validation that you need from your partner so you don't seek it elsewhere.
Yeah.
So
Get
thank you.
get out of neutral, stay in gear, stay engaged with your relationship, and don't take each other for granted, and speak to each other, share, right? Love each other. Amazing. And you've demonstrated that, Vanessa. Thank you. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Thanks for being part of the podcast again. Appreciate you investing time in the show and you for listening this far. Thank you. One thing to keep in mind is we are looking for help and some support for the podcast. If you are able to help support our show, our little podcast show here, we can go over to livingthenextchapter.com and all the instructions will be there to help support the show. It takes about $30 to $40 a month to do this, just for the hosting and all of that other stuff that we pay for. But if the show is giving you any value and you're enjoying what's happening here, would love any kind of support that you can offer. That would be great. And you being here and sharing the show helps us grow. Helps us get great new authors on the show, connect with other listeners, and build community. So whatever you can do to share this show today, I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here for Living the Next Chapter, and I can't wait to share the next one with you. Talk soon. Have a great day.